This is chapter one, and it's an introduction to quality. A lot of the topics that we're going to talk about in here, we've already addressed because we went through chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9 already. Um, so, quality is really, really important, and it can really make or break a company given the quality of its products and services. It can really be or serve as a competitive advantage or a competitive edge for a company, particularly in this day and age of global economy. So quality can have many different meanings to different people depending on what situation or scenario they're working with. It could mean perfection or fast delivery or consistency or not having waste or the product being good and usable, or it could have many different meanings depending on who's defining quality and in what situation. But we can think about quality in terms of various dimensions of product quality. One dimension is performance, which is efficiency with which a product achieves its intended purpose. So this might be the return on a mutual fund investment, or the fuel efficiency of a car, or the acoustic range of a pair of stereo speakers. Better performance is usually synonymous with better quality. Another dimension of quality is its features, the attributes of a product that supplement the product's basic performance. So these include the many of the bells and whistles, for example, that are contained in a product. These days anymore, you go to buy a TV and there are so many different ones, and high definition, and they're curved, and they have all these bells and whistles that you can't even decide what you want to purchase anymore. Another dimension is reliability. So this is the propensity of a product to perform consistently over its useful design life. A subfield in quality management is this reliability management, and it's essentially this application of probability theory to quality. So a product is considered reliable if the chance that it will fail during its design life is very low. For example, if a refrigerator has, let's say, 2% chance of failure in its 10 years of lifetime, then we say that it's 98% reliable. And then we have conformance dimension. It's the conformance means adherence to certain numeric dimensions for the product's performance. This is perhaps the most traditional dimension of quality. When a product is designed, certain numeric dimensions for the product's performance are established. For example, capacity, speed, or size, durability, all of that, or any of that. These numeric product dimensions are the specifications, and so how well a product meets its specifications is essentially whether or not it can it's conforming. Other dimensions of product quality are its durability, or the degree to which a product tolerates stress or trauma without failing. An example, for instance, of a product that's not very durable is a light bulb. Light bulbs are damaged easily and they cannot be repaired. In contrast, a trash can, for example, is very durable, and it can go through a lot of wear and tear and still it would be in good working condition. Another dimension is serviceability, or the ease of repair for a product. So serviceability of a product is whether or not it can easily be repaired, and whether or not it can cheaply be repaired. Many products require service by a technician, such as a technician who repairs, let's say, your personal computer. So if the service is fast, and if the service is courteous, and it's easy to get the service, and the person is competent and knows how to do his or her job, then for the most part that product is considered to have good serviceability. Aesthetics is the degree to which a product attributes to which products attributes are matched to consumer preferences. So although let's say vinyl interiors for a car are really easy to clean, and they don't have any maintenance, and they're not as expensive as leather, for instance, but leather interiors are usually considered to be aesthetically more appealing, and so it's more expensive, and most people want to have leather interiors. So this measure of aesthetic quality, or this degree to which the aesthetic quality is appealing, is it must be matched to customers' preferences, right? So some customers would want it, and some don't. So depending on what product you have, that measure of aesthetic quality of it, or dimension of it, may or may not be appropriate. For instance, if somebody goes and buys a very cheap car, then it's really not that important for them to have leather interior, and therefore for a low cost automaker or model of a car, or type of a car, maker of a car, if they put leather interiors, then that's probably not a good strategy or use of their resources. And finally, we have perceived quality, which is a customer's understanding of the goodness of a product. So this essentially is what your book calls transcendent quality. It's let's say, for instance, Mercedes-Benz, for example, a lot of the times people say that, or think of Mercedes being a very good engineered automobile that is reliable, and that it provide value for money. It gives that level of worth or value that the customer really would like to have, as opposed to, again, another auto manufacturer that may not have a very good reputation for engineering. So that perceived measure of quality that tells us how good a product is by just having maybe a name recognition, or some branding, or some messaging that it has associated with it, is that perceived quality. So that brings us to definitions of quality, which we've somewhat addressed so far. So transcendent perspective is that excellence perspective that I just gave an example. For example, Mercedes-Benz. Product perspective, it addresses quantities of product attributes. For instance, that number of threads in bedding, in sheet, or in a piece of fabric tells us whether or the quality of it. If you have 500 threads per inch of the sheets that you put on your bedding, that's considered really, really good quality bedding. Or the megabits for your home computer or internet, would the more megabits it can you have, the better the quality of the service is that you're going to get. User perspective tells us whether or not it's fit for its intended use. One example that personally comes to mind is, I had a Toyota Avalon, and it was really, really a good car, and great head clearance, and I'm rather tall. I'm 5'9", and so getting into that car was just so easy. I had an accident. We had to change our car, and my husband's like, okay, you have to have a Lexus because it has like 10 million, not 10 million, but it has a lot of airbags. And so I get into this Lexus, and I have my seat pushed down all the way down, and still I feel like my head clearance is not as good as it was in a Toyota Avalons. And so whether or not the product fits the intended use, is essentially that that user perspective. So the other one is manufacturing perspective, value perspective. It's that quality versus price. You may have heard the British say we're not rich enough to buy cheap products, and that's essentially what it means. Is generally the higher quality products are higher in price. Manufacturing perspective, it's that conformance to specifications. Will it do what it's supposed to do? Can it fit can it fulfill the customer's expectations? And then we have the customer perspective, which is, do we meet or exceed what the customer wants from from the product or from the service. So what do we mean by customer? In this case, customer could be the ultimate buyer of the goods or service. And then you can have, of course, external and internal customers. You could have external customers as a business. For instance, you could be the manufacturer of parts that you supply to an auto manufacturer, for instance. Or you could have internal customers, and that would be anyone who receives the goods or service from someone within the organization. So here's a good depiction of that. We have the customer that essentially drives. It's the needs of the customer that drives marketing unit to force or to drive the design process, and then the manufacturing, and then of course the product gets distributed to the customer. And so at the center of it, you have that customer perspective. We want to meet and exceed our customers' customers' needs. But from the customer perspective, we have that transcendent perspective. It's that excellence in product, total product experience that the customer wants. From the marketing, we must be concerned about that user perspective. Does it fit the intended use? From a design perspective, it's that value perspective. From a design level, we have that value perspective, and that would be it's that quality versus price of it, and we want to not over engineer or not over build quality into our design, but we do want just enough of it that would get the job done. From a manufacturing perspective, we want that specifications and meeting the specifications and the capability of the product. And so it's a holistic perspective in terms of the value chain as a whole, and whether or not our product and service is going to fulfill each and every, from a quality perspective, and the fact that there are so many different quality dimensions, are we able to meet all of these within our value chain. So history of quality management, quality goes back to ancient times. Your book talks about the Zhou dynasty in China, but there are marvels of engineering that could only happen with good quality management and with respect and with detailed attention to quality management. Pyramids of Egypt, Acropolis of ancient Greece, Persepolis of the Persian Empire, all of those indicate that quality and attention to quality and concern for quality have been around for as long as man has been and human beings have been around. But then that brings us to the age of craftsmanship and skilled workers, guilds that used to exist, and then the Industrial Revolution and interchangeable parts, and essentially the start of industrial age. Early 20th century, companies started to actually have a separate department for quality. Ford Motor Company, of course, started having its first production line. Statistical methods of quality assurance were used, and professional societies, publications. American Society for Quality, for instance, was formed in the 20th century, about 1940s or so. Then we have the post-World War. The evolution of quality management in Japan started. Demings and Juran and their dealings with Japan and their association, and essentially giving the Japanese the good reputation that they have for quality management. And then the U.S. quality revolution took place in the 1980s. There was this quality crisis, and actually there's a good documentary from the 1980s. It's an NBC documentary that says, "If Japan can, why can't we?" And I may give you the link for that as part of course material. And then we get into the rapid growth in business. In the late 1980s, the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award was started. All kinds of books, consulting firms, training on quality started really taking off. And then this is around the time that we start talking about little Q, which means essentially managing manufacturing quality. We talk about big Q, which is that managing quality in all the organizational process and not just contained to manufacturing and engineering. And then we have TQM, or total quality, which is essentially a management system that focuses on the people within the organization, realizing that it's the people within the organization that can continually increase customer satisfaction and lower costs. Anymore, we really don't talk about TQM anymore because it got a bad rap. Cynicism, disinterest, incompetent execution of it essentially resulted in TQM getting a bad rap. Many companies claim that they adopted TQM, but they did not. really have the right philosophy in place, and they didn't execute it well. And that's where, when Quality Digest editor said, no, TQM isn't dead. TQM failures just prove that bad management is still alive and kicking. And so, really, TQM, it may have faded away in terms of people calling it TQM, but it got even stronger. It served to be as a foundation or fundamentals of what we call today as performance excellence. And it's that essentially means focus on customer value, organizational sustainability, improving effectiveness and capability of the processes and products, and organizational and personal learning. And so, with that, then we get into the emergence of Six Sigma, focus on customers, results oriented, improving the business. We've already discussed Six Sigma in one of the previous chapters, or one of the previous modules. Globalization of quality is really big now, because before, it used to be that every country and every region had its own definition of quality and its quality, and they followed their own methods of securing quality and maintaining quality within their operations. But anymore, there are national and international societies and organizations and bodies of knowledge that are dedicated to a global perspective on quality. And so there is really no more significant differences among regions around the world when it comes to agreement on what quality is and how to define it and how to measure it and how to achieve it. And current and future challenges, in terms of application of principles of quality and performance excellence, we continue to have challenges. People do tend to resist it. They do tend to have guards built against it. But the one thing that is for sure true is that quality is a race without a finish line, that it's continuous quality improvement that we should be seeking and we should be in search of. And so this brings us to this. I really like this diagram because it essentially says that manufacturing quality, or that little q, is essentially a subset of improved product design, that big Q. And both of those in part are related to service quality. So even when you have a product, service quality, not in terms of just services, but also the service that as a product, as a manufacturer of a product and a tangible product, you still have obligations to the customer in terms of serviceability of it. And so all of that is then part of performance excellence. So you cannot have excellence in performance as an organization if you don't have commitment to manufacturing quality, product design, improved product design, so that you can have manufacturing quality and then being able to service the product and the service. Contemporary influences on quality. Again, globalization is a big thing, global responsibility. Customers are aware. The internet has really educated people from all across ages and all across the world. And so it's important for companies to realize that what an individual thought 20 years ago or even 5 years ago is no longer what the customer perspective is today. They have access to everything. People can order products from anywhere in the world. They can make business deals with other businesses across the world, supply chains, are huge global supply chains, and so business to business relationships are even changing. Um, Workforce of the future, the way people learn and the way people um, study and the way people um, take in knowledge is also different. And so their perspective on quality and work and how to work is also changing. We have an aging population. The 21st century quality is very different from what it was 10 or 20 years ago. And then innovation, of course, is the name of the game because um, there are so many different companies and competitors that if you, with a blink of an eye, they could be taking over um, and um, and capturing your market share and market niche. So quality in marketing and sales personnel are responsible for determining the needs and expectations of the customer and the consumer. Um, Once that's done, then we need to design the product. And so product design, we've already addressed this: concurrent engineering, design for Six Sigma, concept development, detailed design, design optimization, verification. All of those are important. And so to ensure that we meet requirements that are set by marketing function, we need to be able to make sure that our product design is done with quality in mind. Quality in purchasing, the purchasing agents and departments should not simply be responsible for low cost procurement, but they should maintain a clear focus on quality purchased goods and materials. This goes back to that value perspective of quality, and that you cannot buy. We're not rich enough to buy cheap items. Quality in production and planning and scheduling. It's really important, right? People, technologies, machinery, raw material, etc. Everything has to be in place. All the suns and the moons and the stars must be aligned for you to be able to do a good job in your production. And so in order, all of this is again tied to the next slide, which is manufacturing and assembly. I mean, without the right technologies and people and machinery, you won't be able to do a good job in terms of your production. Quality in process design. Manufacturing processes must be capable, so that capability studies that we studied before, so that we know that our process is performing well, and how our process is performing relative to specifications is also very important. And quality in finished goods, inspection and testing is important. No matter how much you try to build quality into your design and into your engineering and into your manufacturing, and into your statistical process control for high volume productions, at the end of the day there will be some items, some units that may be defective, and so it's important to have some single sampling or double sampling inspection plans, and have a quality team that's dedicated to finding defects, so that we make sure that no defective units reach the customer. We must have quality in installation and service. Once the product is out the door, our obligation to the customer is not finished, and so we must be able to provide high quality service afterwards. In services, quality in services is defined as any primary or complementary activity that doesn't directly produce a physical, tangible product, so it's a non-good production, and it's a transaction essentially between a customer and a provider. And that's what a service is. There are critical differences between service and manufacturing in terms of quality. It's hard to define performance standards and or a unit of measure when you're dealing with services. For instance, when you go get a haircut, maybe the same hairdresser would give me and my sister the same haircut. It's the same individual, same haircut. But my satisfaction with the quality of the job that she has done and my sister's may be different. Or when you go see a doctor, two people may go and visit the same doctor, but depending on what it is that they have wrong with them and that experience that they have with the doctor, they may have different perceptions of quality. Um, customers need customers' needs and performance standards are more difficult to identify and measure, so we've addressed that. And then the service requires a higher degree of customization. For instance, if I'm, let's say, in a car accident and I deal with my insurance company, my needs in terms of what's wrong with my car or what happened or what kind of injuries myself or the other passengers may have sustained, that would be different from another individual customer who deals with the insurance company. And so my report when I'm talking to someone about Allstate, for instance, what I have to say and what the other customer from Allstate would have to say would be different. There is not no uniformity in experiences because the service is not uniform. Services are produced and consumed simultaneously. So you go get an x-ray, they're giving you the service, and you're essentially being x-rayed right then and there as the service is being given to you. It's not like when you go and you buy a phone and once you buy, or it's manufactured and then once you buy a home and you bring it home, then you're experiencing the functionality of that telephone, of that cell phone, for example. Customers are often involved in actual process. It's not in a manufacturing when it's a product quality characteristics that we're looking at. Somebody is making it in a company in a plant in a manufacturing facility, and then the customer ends up with the product and uses it. But in a service situation, the customer is right then and there when the service is being produced and delivered. Services are more labor intensive than manufacturing because somebody has to be there to give you the service. And then services handle large number of transactions. This could be, for instance, like FDR, First Data Resources, that handles hundreds of thousands of, let's say, credit card statements per day for, let's say, a major credit card company. Okay, so components of service quality: people and technology. And it's very important. People are the driving force of service quality, and so if we must make sure that they're fully trained and they buy into this notion that they are the quality that the customer receives when there is a service being rendered. And then technology, computers and information technology is really big for services. E-commerce is a big thing anymore, and so that service, Amazon, for example, provides a really huge service to people in all over the world. And so without the technology behind and the computer and the software and all of that's the cornerstone of, let's say, an e-commerce business like Amazon, the company would suffer huge losses as a result of poor quality that the customers would experience. And so people and technology are really, really cornerstones of service quality. All right. Thank you.